Hey, what's up guys? This is the video for section 4.1, which is graphing equations in slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and look at that form first. The slope-intercept form is when you have a y equals mx plus b. In a function form or function notation, you might have f of x equals mx plus b. There's three forms that you guys need to understand in order to graph a line. So we are talking about the slope-intercept form first, but there's also the standard form, which we talked about a few videos away. And we also are going to look at the point slope form. Now, what is the slope-intercept form and what do we need in order to graph the line? So first, we need m. M is going to be your slope. And we already know slope is going to be rise over run. It is a fraction, and it is going to be rise over run. So let me just put equal here. So the fraction is going to look like a number on the top, rise, and a number on the bottom, which is your run. B is your y-intercept. That's where the line that we're graphing is going to cross the y-axis. Sometimes it crosses the y-axis, sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time, 99% of the time, it will cross the y-axis. So this number after the x is going to be a minus, it's going to be or a plus, it's going to be your y-intercept. Your slope is just the number in front of the x, not the x, just a number. So it might be negative, it might be positive. So to graph, when you guys graph in slope-intercept form, y is by itself, and you have your slope and your y-intercept, you are going, step number one, check that you do have the slope-intercept form. Sometimes the y is not by itself, so you're going to have to rewrite it with y by itself. If it's already by itself, you guys are good. Just look for the slope and the y-intercept. Second step, you are going to graph. First, you go to your y-intercept, which is the b value. Then, from that point, you're going to rise and run according to your slope. So, b, the y-intercept, might be negative, might be positive. You go to that point, you're going to make a point, and then using your slope, you're going to find a second point. When you graph a line, you guys can use 2, 3, 4, 10 different points, but 2 is enough. And you just make those 2 points, graph them, and you connect the points. So let's try some examples while we are graphing slope-intercept form. So look at the first example here. Y equals 1/2 x plus 1. We want to graph it. So first, we have y by itself. So that's good. My slope, I'm going to write down m here, is the number with the x. So 1/2 is going to be my slope. The number on the top is my rise, and the number on the bottom is my run. What does it mean? Well, rise, you guys notice, is a positive 1. So that means you guys will go up 1. And run means it's positive. So you're going to go 2 to the right. Now, from where do you guys go up and then 2 to the right? That's where the y-intercept comes in. Y-intercept is the number after the x. So I'm going to put b equals, and it is a positive. There's a plus 1. So this is where you start graphing the line, your y-intercept. So on the y-axis, you look at the graph over here, the y-intercept is going to be right here. That's your positive 1. So you make a point at the positive 1. From this point right here, you guys will go up 1 and 2 to the right. That is your slope. 1 up, 1, 2, and you make a point right here. So after you make those 2 points, you just connect the line. And you got yourself the line. So we have the slope positive 1/2, and the y-intercept is 1. Notice the line is going up because the slope is positive. So what about when you guys do not have the y by itself? First, I get y by itself because I want to use the slope-intercept form, and I need to find the slope and the y-intercept. So I am going to subtract 2x from both sides to get y by itself. So that's going to be gone. It's going to cancel. 3y equals negative 2x minus 3. Those are not like terms, so you just put them side by side. I'm going to divide by 3 because I want y by itself. And if you divide the left side by 3, you have to divide everything else by the same number, by 3. And this would turn into 1. So I have my y here, and we have negative 2/3x. That doesn't simplify, so you leave it by itself, minus 1. 3 over 3 turns into 1. I need to find my slope. So my slope is the number with the x. So this one here, negative 2 over 3. And my y-intercept is the number after the x. So b equals minus negative 1. Now look at the slope. When you guys have a negative next to the fraction, you always take that negative to the top so you don't get confused, and the bottom is going to be positive. So the top is negative and the bottom is positive. So that means that you guys will go down 2 on your slope, your rise, and then 3 to the right. So let's go ahead and plot the point first. You always start with the y-intercept, negative 1 in this case. So I go to the negative 1 here. There's the y-axis, y-intercept, and I go 2 down, 2 steps. So there's 1, there's 2, and I go 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. So I make my point right here. I connect my points, and I make my line. Notice the line is going down because the slope is negative, but that is your linear equation. That is what the graph looks like. Now, students do get confused when you don't see a number in the equation. So let me explain this one here and how to graph it. So first of all, notice the y is by itself. So it is slope in its form, y equals negative x. My slope is going to be the number before the x. So if you notice right here, before the x, we have a negative, invisible 1. So my slope is negative 1. Now, it has to be a fraction because I need the rise and I need the run. So that negative 1, to make it a fraction, just put a 1 under. And that's going to be your rise on the top and your run on the bottom. Any whole number that you guys have to make it a fraction, you just put a 1 under the number. Now for my y-intercept, notice that my y-intercept after the x is nothing. It's empty. So some people say that we do have a plus 0, which is mathematically correct, but just remember, it's no number, no value. So my y-intercept will be 0. So that's going to be the origin because the y-axis at 0 is the origin. So you start with the y-intercept. So there's the y-intercept here. You guys are going to go down 1 and 1 to the right. So we have my point right here. You connect the 2 points and you guys have your line. Notice that every time I have my line or I graph my line, I put arrowheads on the sides because that is saying that it's going to infinity, both sides, both directions. So you always need those arrowheads when you connect the points. If you guys are missing one of the variables, so notice the first equation, y equals negative 1, you have to remember that you have 2 options. You might have a vertical line or horizontal. Now look at the bottom equation here. X equals 3. So if you guys have the y by itself and there's no x, this line up here, y equals negative 1, is going to be horizontal. So let me just write that down, horizontal line, which means there's no slope. The slope is 0, horizontal. When you guys graph it, you are going to go to that number on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, the negative 1 is right here. So I'm just going to make a point right there. And you make an horizontal line from left to right. That's what's horizontal, going through that point. So this blue line right here is y equals negative 1. The bottom one, when x is by itself and there's no y, that's going to be a vertical line. So on the x-axis, you guys go to that number. And you guys go to the x because you have an x-axis. X-axis, x. So positive 3 is going to be right here. You make your point and you make your vertical going up and down. That's vertical, crossing that point. So my x equals 3 is my purple line, and that is a vertical line. So you just have to memorize, remember that y by itself, no x, is horizontal. X by itself, no y, it's vertical. Now this example, which is writing an equation in slope-inverse form, we are not graphing, but notice that it says here to write an equation. Now you really have to understand what form you want. So I'm just going to highlight what we are looking for. And we are looking for the slope-intercept form of this equation here. They do give us on those three different examples the slope and the y-intercept. The slope and the y-intercept, we have the slope and the y-intercept. So all we have to do is substitute the numbers into the right formula, the right form. So since I am looking for the slope-intercept form, first let me just write that down, y equals mx plus b. And I am going to substitute what I know. I know my slope is -3, so I'm just going to put m equals -3. And my y-intercept is +8. So I'm going to put b, that's your y-intercept in your slope-intercept form, which equals +8. So one more time, m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So now that you substitute the numbers, y equals -3x plus 8 will be your answer. Now sometimes you do have to look at the slope because it can be a 0 for this example. So I'm just going to put m equals 0 right here and b equals +6. So when I substitute the numbers in the formula, y equals mx plus b, I will have y equals 0x plus 6. Now you guys already know that anything times 0 is 0. So actually we don't need to write that down, 0x. So we can just write it as y equals 6, which is my y by itself. That is the slope-intercept form. And we have everything else on the other side. So just remember what is the slope-intercept form, and you just need to substitute the numbers that you need for this form. Y has to be by itself, and we have the slope, and we have the y-intercept for b. Now, if you guys want to write the equation from a graph, now one more time, notice that it says here we want to write the slope-intercept form, so we must have that y by itself. We do need two things. We need the slope and the y-intercept. So let's look at this blue graph right here. My y-intercept, that's the easiest one to find when you look at a graph. So I'm going to put b equals down here, and that's going to be this point on the y-axis. That point on the y-axis is +2. So b equals +2. Now my slope, when you guys have a graph, remember that you can use 2 points on the line and you find the rise and the run. I already have 1 point. I can use the y-intercept because that is on the line. And I'm going to look for another point that crosses one of those corners on the boxes. So notice we have a box here. So it touches one of those corners, and I'm going to put a point right there, and I'm going to find my rise over run. So I need, from the y-intercept, I need to go up 1 unit, and I go to the right 2 units. So remember that my slope is rise over run. And when you guys substitute the numbers, I have 1 over 2. Rise is 1 and the run is 2. So to put everything together, when you guys write down the slope-intercept form, let me just write it down again so you guys can see it. Y equals mx plus b. I'm just going to substitute the m, which is 1/2 x, and the b is +2. So here's my answer. You also have to make sense of the problem. Notice the slope is +1/2. So that's why the line is going uphill from left to right. It's increasing. It's going up. If you look at the next one, well, this one is going down. So that means my slope has to be negative. And I do need to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So first, let me find the y-intercept. We don't need the x-intercept. We need the slope and the y-intercept. So scratch x-intercept. We are going to look for the slope. Now the y-intercept is right here. So this is going to be my b value. So b equals -2. Now my slope, I'm going to find 2 points that are on the line. So I already have 1. And I'm going to use, I'm looking for one right here. This one crosses the corners of the boxes. So I'm going to use this point to find my slope. So let me find my rise. So I need to go down in this case. So that means I go down 2 and then I go to the right. So let me put -2 because I go down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So let me put a +5 because I go to the right. So I have m equals rise over run, which equals -2/5. So when you put everything together, you guys will have y equals my slope, -2/5, x, and b is -2. So I'm going to put a -2 for my b value. And that is my slope in its form. You have y by itself, you have the slope, and you have the y-intercept. M is rise over run, and b is going to be your y-intercept. Alright guys, this concludes my video. So make sure that you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.